It is June 21st, 1629, and Mexico City wakes to rain so heavy the streets turn to rivers. The storm has been falling for 36 hours without pause, drumming on tile roofs relentlessly. This is the story of the day an entire capital drowned and stayed underwater for 5 long years. Mexico City sits in a valley that was once Lake Texcoco, a vast and ancient freshwater expanse. The Aztecs built Tenochtitlan on islands in that lake, connected by causeways and floating gardens. When Hernán Cortés conquered in 1521, he wanted a European-style city built on that sacred ground. Spanish engineers drained the lake, filled in the canals, and built directly over Aztec ruins. Indigenous engineers warned them clearly, the valley has no drainage, and the water will return. The Spanish ignored those warnings, convinced their technology could control nature forever. For over a century, the city grew. Churches, palaces, plazas built on unstable ground. By 1629, Mexico City was home to 300,000 souls, the largest city in the Americas. It was also a powder keg of disaster, waiting for the rain that would inevitably come. That rain began on June 20th, a tropical storm pulling moisture from both coasts at once. The clouds settled over the Valley of Mexico and refused to move, dumping rain in thick sheets. By dawn on June 21st, the canals overflowed and the streets had become fast-moving torrents. The Albarradón de San Lázaro, the great dike protecting the city, groaned under the pressure. At noon, it broke with a sound like thunder, and thousands of cubic meters of water roared through. Entire neighborhoods disappeared in minutes as the flood swept through with unstoppable force. Families scrambled to upper floors, watching their homes fill with muddy, foul-smelling water. Furniture floated out of doors, while animals drowned in their pens, screams echoing through chaos. The Plaza Mayor, the heart of Spanish power, became a shallow lake choked with floating debris. Horses drowned in their stables, massive bodies floating past ornate colonial doorways. Churches stood half-submerged, their bells falling silent beneath the rising brown water. Viceroy Rodrigo Pacheco stood on the palace balcony, watching his glorious city vanish below. He ordered every boat into the flooded streets to rescue trapped families from rooftops. Indigenous workers in canoes paddled through what had been grand avenues just hours before. They pulled screaming children from windows and old people from collapsing roofs all day long. The city of carriages and cobblestones became an apocalyptic waterworld in a single day. For 3 days straight, the rain continued without mercy, and the water kept rising higher. By the end of the first week, over 30,000 people had died from drowning or disease. Corpses floated in the streets, bloated and rotting, bumping against walls under the sun. Survivors clung to whatever high ground remained, starving and desperate, watching the sky. Wealthy families huddled on rooftops with whatever food and water they had grabbed in time. The poor had nothing, clinging to tree branches and floating debris, praying for rescue. At night, the city was eerily silent, except for lapping water and distant cries for help. No lights burned in the darkness, and no bells rang. The proud capital had become a lagoon. Spanish authorities held emergency meetings, debating whether to abandon the doomed city entirely. The archbishop proposed moving the capital to Puebla, a city on higher ground 60 miles away. Religious leaders claimed the flood was divine punishment for the sins of the conquistadors. Some believed God was reclaiming the land stolen from the Aztecs and their sacred lake. But Viceroy Pacheco refused, declaring that Mexico City was the jewel of New Spain. Abandoning it would mean admitting defeat, losing face before the crown and the world. So the water stayed, and the city learned to live in it like cursed souls. Canoes became the only way to move through streets that were now dark, foul-smelling canals. The smell was unbearable. Rotting vegetation, animal carcasses, human waste all mixed together. Markets operated from second-story windows, vendors selling from boats to customers above. Food prices skyrocketed wildly overnight. A single chicken cost more than a month's wages. Bread became a luxury that only the wealthy could afford in the flooded ruins. Priests held mass in churches with water, halfway up the altar, congregations standing knee-deep. The faithful waded through filthy water to receive communion, their prayers desperate. Hymns echoed across the water, voices of survivors clinging to faith amid total devastation. Buildings began to rot from the base up as water dissolved foundations of adobe and stone. Walls cracked and tilted before entire structures collapsed into the flood with groans. Each collapse sent waves rippling outward, rocking the boats and canoes tied to balconies. Cholera and typhus swept through the floating slums, killing hundreds more each week. The sick had nowhere to go, no hospitals, no doctors, just death in the dark, wet hell. Bodies of the dead were dumped into the water when there was nowhere left to bury them. The indigenous population suffered most, crammed into the lowest neighborhoods with no escape. They had warned the Spanish this would happen, and now they paid the price for being ignored. Their labor had built the city, and now their deaths would rebuild it from the water. For 5 years, Mexico City remained partially submerged, a ghost of its former grandeur. The water level fluctuated with seasons, but never fully drained, turning the city to swamp. In dry season, water receded slightly, revealing streets coated with thick, stinking mud. In rainy season, it rose again, flooding the same neighborhoods over and over without mercy. Engineers worked desperately on the Desagüe de Huehuetoca, a massive tunnel to drain the valley. The project had been proposed decades earlier, but dismissed as too expensive and difficult. Now, with the city drowning, the Crown finally authorized the funds to begin construction. Thousands of indigenous laborers dug through solid rock with simple picks and bare hands. They worked in shifts around the clock, descending into darkness with only torches for light. Many died in tunnel collapses, buried alive in darkness with no markers and no prayers. Their bones remained entombed in the rock, unnamed and uncounted, sacrifices to ambition. The work was brutal and slow, claiming lives daily in the mountain's suffocating belly. Cave-ins were common and deadly, while floods within the tunnel drowned workers instantly. The tunnel stretched for miles through solid rock, built on the backs of the poor. Progress was measured in inches per day, paid for in blood and broken bodies. Finally, in 1634, after 5 years of labor and thousands of deaths, the tunnel opened. Water began to flow through the mountain, a slow, steady drain that gave the city hope. It took months for the flood to recede, revealing a city transformed beyond recognition. Buildings had collapsed into rubble, while streets had vanished, replaced by mud and debris. The stench was overwhelming. Years of accumulated filth, rot, and death all exposed at once. The population had dropped by half, survivors scattered or dead in unmarked mass graves. Entire neighborhoods that had thrived for generations were abandoned to ruin and silence. Diseases had wiped out entire families. Some homes stood empty, doors open, furniture rotting. Once grand colonial mansions stood empty, their walls cracked and courtyards filled with mud. Frescoes were ruined, and wooden beams had rotted through while gardens choked with dead plants. But Mexico City refused to die, rising from the water like a defiant ghost. The survivors returned with determination, ready to rebuild everything the flood had destroyed. Reconstruction began immediately, more desperate and determined than ever before in its history. New dikes were built stronger and higher, while canals were dredged deeper to carry water. The Spanish crown poured vast fortunes into resurrecting the city, refusing to admit defeat. Stone replaced adobe as the building material of choice for the new structures rising up. Laborers worked around the clock, clearing debris, rebuilding foundations, raising structures. Architects redesigned the city with lessons learned from the flood carved into every plan. The cathedral was restored and the palace repaired. Life slowly, painfully returned to normal. The Great Flood became a legend, a cautionary tale whispered in every generation after. Parents told their children about the years the city drowned, so they would never forget. Old families marked the high water line on walls, a permanent reminder of what happened. The flood changed everything: laws, architecture, engineering, shaping the city for centuries. Even today, Mexico City sits on unstable ground, sinking 5 to 10 centimeters yearly. The ancient lake beneath has never forgiven the city for being built on its grave. Floods still come during rainy season, paralyzing neighborhoods and drowning the streets. The metro floods and homes flood. Entire avenues become rivers every summer without fail. Buildings still crack and tilt as the soft earth gives way beneath their massive weight. The Metropolitan Cathedral leans visibly to one side, sinking faster on softer ground. The water is always waiting beneath the streets, patient and inevitable, ready to reclaim all. Modern engineers pump millions of gallons daily from beneath to keep the city from sinking. But the battle is being lost inch by inch, year by year, as the lake pulls it down. The Great Flood of 1629 taught Mexico City a truth it still refuses to accept even now. Some places cannot be tamed by human hands. Some debts to nature must be paid in full. Like and subscribe, because the next chapter of history's greatest disasters awaits you.